So as some of you know, I trained as a lawyer in my previous life being before World Vision. And during that period, I got to read about a famous US Supreme Court judge. His name was Oliver Wendell Holmes. And he had, amongst many other very wise sayings, he had something like, lawyers spend a great deal of their time shoveling smoke. I could relate to that at that period. However, when I joined World Vision 2 years ago, I got to know a bit about his father. He was also a great mind, but unlike the son, he was a doctor. And he once had said in one of his works, pretty much all the honest truth-telling in the world is done by children. And this is what I want to talk about today. Children speaking the truth to people in power and to adults. As many of you know, listening to children can be great fun, but it can also be quite embarrassing. I remember when I was 6 years old, telling a friend of my mom, "Oh, you look pregnant. Are you pregnant?" And I see my mom looking at me in a stern way. I realized not all women who look like that were pregnant. I remembered my mom. She had given birth to my brother a year ago, so I thought that she was pregnant too. There I realized that not every time that you speak the truth, it is welcome. The same happened to me when I moved to Kosovo. I got to witness something when we were organizing a meeting between vulnerable children and the Prime Minister. As soon as the Prime Minister of Kosovo walks in, one of the children that we had trained during our programs walks to him and says, "Mr. Prime Minister, how come that we don't have a law for the protection of children in Kosovo? We do have a law for the protection of animals. Aren't we more important than animals?" As you know, for me, it was not the best way to start a meeting with the Prime Minister, but it was still the right words coming from a child, and the Prime Minister was listening. While the openness and transparency of a child can sometimes create very embarrassing moments for adults, I think that we can all agree that children can be amazing truth tellers. Over the years at World Vision, we have developed expertise in two critical areas. The first is child protection. It is at the heart of many things that we do in the Middle East and Eastern Europe region. The other is citizens' voice and action. We otherwise call it CVA. It means it's a tool that is designed to mobilize citizens across our areas of operation to get their government to improve the delivery of services. It is primarily used in areas like health and education. And as I said, it's widely used across the world in World Vision programming. However, we had never used CVA until today in Kosovo with children or addressing issues other than health and education. So it was only a matter of time until we asked the question, why not look at CVA as a tool designed to address the questions of child protection in Kosovo? So we did. We piloted a new approach in 3 municipalities in partnership with a local organization called Health for All. Our aim was to use the CVA methodology first to help vulnerable families access economic aid, and second to get the government to do more to address issues of child labor and child protection in those areas. We set up projects, but we also decided to gather data across 3 communities. One where CVA wasn't used at all, the second where the CVA would only involve adults, and the third community where the CVA would involve both adults and children. Our research asked 2 main questions. Is CVA an effective approach for influencing child protection policy? And the second was, does the participation of children in the CVA process leads to their needs being better integrated into government policy than when adults alone engage in CVA? For many of you who do not know Kosovo, many do, it's one of the poorest countries in Europe. Unemployment of youth is over 50%. Poverty is widespread. Children across ethnic groups face many needs, but especially those children who come from Roma and Egyptian minority groups face an especially difficult situation. They cope with societal prejudice and dislocation caused by the war, as well as the changing economic landscape. The issues that came out during our project were problems associated with poverty, unemployment, early marriage. There wasn't much trust towards the government. there wasn't even an understanding of what services the government was provided, or that the government was supposed to be providing some services. Having said that, these families also didn't have much information on the services the government was supposed to be providing. In these families, too many children are relied upon to work. They work on farms or in the streets, begging, collecting scrap, or cleaning car windows. Children who were working in the street had stories of being bullied or abused. A young child was reported to have lost his life while collecting scrap as he was attacked by wild dogs. We began to train groups of children and youth in Fuškosova municipality, which is one of the most vulnerable municipalities in Kosovo. We were training children in different ways to get them to understand that they shouldn't have to work and that they have rights that should be addressed by local authorities. And the results were fascinating. After meeting and talking to adults and children, it became clear that when both adults and children have the opportunity to learn and speak out and take action for change, something about their own character starts to change. Having children describe the challenges that they are facing increased the likelihood that these issues would be taken more seriously by the government. As well as gaining more knowledge, the adults and children reported that they felt more confident, that they would be listened to, and that they felt more willing to speak out about the problems that they see. Through their meetings, both children and adults, with each other, and also with the officials who have the power to make changes, developed better relationships, and it was easier to discuss and raise these issues. What was particularly interesting for World Vision in programming work was that we found that when children get involved in the CVA, the adults become more willing to get involved in activities that help protect children. Hearing children describe the difficulties that they face made it more likely that the government officials would also take this information seriously. So remember the first two questions that were the subject of this research. Is CVA an effective approach for influencing child protection policy and implementation? The research found the answer to be yes. CVA can be applied to child protection, and more than that, it can be a powerful tool for social change. The experience of joining together on child protection issues in Kosovo brought together ethnic groups of both adults and children from different ethnic communities. And from those who do know Kosovo, this is a big deal, bringing communities together across ethnic divisions. For the second question, does the participation of children in CVA lead to their needs being better integrated into government policy than when only adults participate? From the children's perspective, they reported feeling more capable of discussing issues with stakeholders and being more active on child protection issues. Greater levels of confidence, self-esteem and empowerment amongst the children were also noted by parents, teachers, and adults in their communities. A test was developed to measure children's capacity, where possible scores ranged from 0, no capacity at all, to 100, maximum possible capacity. In the community without any CVA taking place, children's capacity was noted to have increased from 17 to 47. Children's capacity in the adults-only CVA community, however, actually decreased from 33 to only 9. And we know this because they saw their friends in the next community being involved and felt more disempowered that they weren't. The children in the CVA community with both adults and children, however, not only increased but moved from 14 to over 87. From the adult perspective, all three communities in the project experienced an increase in willingness, capacity, and actions related to citizen action for child protection. The overall scores regarding willingness, however, were highest for adults who were part of the CVA process that included children, 188 versus 77 and 75 respectively. The other interesting finding, but maybe not surprising, was that the interests of children were different to those of the adults. Children tended to be more interested in child protection issues such as child rights law, while the adults were much more focused on economic aid issues. What mattered to them and what mattered to adults was different. But in the communities where children were included in the CVA process, adults were more interested in the child protection issues, such as the child rights law. Having boys and girls describe the challenges that they face increased the likelihood that these issues would be taken more seriously by government officials. In Kosovo, the advocacy of the groups resulted in changes to a draft law that at the time of research was pending approval, and now that law has been approved. In the future, if we give these types of projects more time, they would inevitably result in policy or legal changes, and the longer time scale would enable the networks to become embedded in the communities and therefore sustainable. There were also some unintended but positive consequences of the CVA approach. How children are treated in public spaces and events also seemed to be improved in those villages where World Vision was implementing the CVA process with children. In the past, CVA projects have only been used to help people to speak about health and education services. This project, however, showed that CVA can also help people speak about child protection. There is something profound in doing a citizen's voice and action process and including children in it. For me, it brings closer the kind of communities that we want to have, where young and old have their say and develop respect for each other in doing so. But most importantly, we see that by being involved and being allowed to be involved, our young people can also end up being protected and cared for. And that has always been the goal. If you want to know more about Citizens' Voice and Action with Children for Child Protection, or any of the other evidence for change work that World Vision is doing, there is a website, wvevidenceforchange.org.